It slid across my skin differently than it ever had before, no longer just a temperature change, but a sensation that made me hyper-aware of every inch of myself. The salty air brushed my shoulders, my stomach, my hips, and my heart began pounding so hard I thought the people around me could hear it. I stood frozen at the edge of the sand, toes sinking slightly, holding my breath as if that alone might stop time. The bikini felt impossibly small. Not because it didn't fit, but because it fit too well. I caught my reflection in the dark glass of a beachside cafe window, and my mind went blank. The figure staring back at me wasn't a disguise or a fantasy anymore. Curves where there hadn't been any. A softness that moved naturally when I shifted my weight. My waist dipped gently before flaring out into hips I still didn't know how to account for. "Oh my God," I whispered. People were already looking. Some stared openly. Others tried not to. A few did double takes, their eyes snapping back like they'd touched something hot. I felt every gaze like a pulse against my skin, exposing, terrifying, intoxicating. This wasn't supposed to happen like this. This was supposed to be private. Controlled. Something I tried once, quietly, just to see. Instead, I was standing on a public beach, half dressed in confidence I didn't yet believe I deserved, and the world was reacting in real time. I swallowed hard. If I walked forward, there would be no pretending this was a phase. If I turned back, I'd never forgive myself. Earlier that morning, I'd stood in my bathroom wrapped in a towel, staring at my body with the same disbelief that had followed me for months now. The changes had crept up on me slowly, too slowly to stop, too fast to ignore. Hormones had reshaped me in quiet, undeniable ways. My chest no longer lay flat. My thighs touched when I stood relaxed. My skin held light differently, softer, smoother, like it had learned a new language overnight. I traced my reflection with my eyes, heart racing. "Do you really want to do this?" I asked myself. The bikini lay on the counter. Black, simple, daring. I'd ordered it late one night, fingers trembling as I clicked confirm. I told myself it was just curiosity. Just to see if it would even fit. It did. Too perfectly. Pulling it on felt like crossing a line I couldn't redraw. The straps rested easily against my shoulders. The top hugged me, supportive in a way that made my breath catch. The bottom settled against my hips without resistance, like it had been waiting. I didn't recognize the confidence slowly rising in my posture. But I felt it. The drive to the beach was torture. Every red light gave me too much time to think. My hands gripped the steering wheel as if I could anchor myself there, keep my body from betraying how alive I felt. Everyone will stare. Everyone will know. You don't belong there like this. And then another voice, quieter, steadier, answered back. Or maybe you do. I parked and sat in silence, listening to the distant sound of waves and laughter. Families. Couples. Groups of friends completely unaware that my entire identity felt like it was balancing on a thin strip of fabric. I almost covered up. Almost. Instead, I grabbed my bag, took one long breath, and stepped out. Walking across the sand was like learning to move again. My hips swayed naturally now, something I'd stopped trying to control because fighting it only made it worse. Each step felt deliberate, exposed. The bikini left nowhere to hide, no loose fabric to soften the truth of my body. I felt eyes on me immediately. A group of teenagers whispered. A woman glanced over and then did a slow double take. A man's jaw actually dropped before he caught himself and looked away. Heat flooded my face. I kept walking. By the time I reached the shoreline, my heart was racing, not from fear alone, but from a strange sense of power. I was doing it. I was here. The sun kissed my skin, warm and affirming, and for the first time in my life, I didn't want to cover myself up. I set my towel down and sat carefully, adjusting the straps with hands that still shook slightly. A woman nearby smiled at me. "Cute bikini," she said casually. I blinked. "Thank you." My voice didn't crack. That small victory felt enormous. The real shock came when I stood up to walk into the water. The ocean wrapped around my legs, cool and grounding, and as the water rose higher, I felt my body move with it, buoyant, balanced, undeniably feminine. Waves brushed against my hips, my stomach, my chest, and I laughed softly despite myself. I caught my reflection again in the surface of the water. She looked confident. She looked like she belonged. When I turned back toward the beach, I noticed more people watching, not with confusion now, but curiosity. Appreciation. Even admiration. A few women whispered to each other, glancing between me and my body like they were trying to solve a puzzle. One of them approached me later while I dried off. "Can I ask you something?" she said carefully. My heart skipped. "Sure." "You're really brave," she said. "I wish I had your confidence." I almost laughed. If only she knew. The aftermath hit later. Photos appeared online, nothing cruel, nothing mocking. Just candid shots of a woman walking confidently along the shoreline. Comments followed. Some surprised. Some supportive. Some stunned. People from my past reached out. "Is that you? You look amazing." I didn't know. I sat on my bed that night, bikini folded neatly beside me, emotions crashing over me in waves stronger than the ocean itself. Fear. Relief. Pride. I had shocked everyone on that beach. But the biggest shock was my own. Because standing there, exposed and visible, I finally understood something I'd been circling for years. I wasn't becoming someone else. I was letting the world see who I'd been quietly growing into all along. The bikini didn't transform me. It revealed me. And once you let yourself be seen, truly seen, there's no unlearning that feeling. If you're watching this, wondering whether you're brave enough to step into your own sunlight, let me tell you this. The beach doesn't care where you started. The waves don't ask for your past. And the confidence you're waiting for? Sometimes it shows up after you take the step. I was terrified. I thought the hardest part was walking onto the sand. I was wrong. The real test came after, when the adrenaline drained, when the sun dipped lower, when I had to live with what I'd just done. With the fact that I hadn't just imagined it, or tried it on in private, or whispered it to a mirror. I had been seen. Not by one person. Not by a safe, understanding friend. But by the world. And the world didn't end. The drive home felt unreal. My skin still hummed from the sun, from the wind, from the memory of eyes on me. I kept catching glimpses of myself in reflective surfaces, store windows, car mirrors, and every time, my stomach flipped. That's me. Not a costume. Not a phase. Not a fantasy. Me. At a red light, I rested my hands on the steering wheel and noticed how natural they looked against my thighs. How my shoulders were relaxed instead of hunched. How my breathing had slowed into something steady. I laughed softly, shaking my head. "All that fear," I whispered. "For this." But the fear wasn't gone. It was just quieter. Like it had finally realized it didn't get to run the show anymore. The messages started that evening. At first, I ignored my phone, letting it buzz on the kitchen counter while I showered. The water felt incredible against my skin, warm, cleansing, grounding. I stood there longer than necessary, eyes closed, replaying moments from the beach. The smile from the woman who complimented my bikini. The casual acceptance. The way no one had demanded explanations. When I finally checked my phone, my heart kicked up again. "Is that really you? You look so confident. I didn't recognize you at first." Wow. There were a few awkward ones. A couple that made me tense, fingers hovering over the screen. But there were also messages that made my throat tighten. One from an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. I saw the photo. I just wanted to say, "You look happy." And I'm glad. I stared at that one for a long time. Happy. I hadn't realized how rare that word had been in my life until someone else used it so easily about me. Going back to the beach the next weekend wasn't part of the plan. I told myself I'd wait. Ease into things. Let the moment breathe. But all week, something tugged at me. A quiet pull in my chest. Not recklessness, certainty. So Saturday morning, I stood in front of my closet and reached for the bikini again. This time, my hands didn't shake. I paired it with a loose cover-up for the walk from the car, hair pulled back, sunglasses perched on my nose. I looked intentional. Like someone who had made a choice instead of stumbled into one. As I stepped onto the sand, I noticed something immediately. I wasn't scanning for reactions anymore. I was scanning for space, where I wanted to sit, where the sun felt best, where I'd be comfortable. That alone felt like a revolution. A woman passed me with her friends and said, "I love your confidence," without breaking stride. I smiled. Thanks. And meant it. Confidence doesn't arrive all at once. I learned that slowly, in moments that didn't feel cinematic at all. Like standing in line for ice cream, still in my bikini, and realizing no one was staring anymore. Not because I'd become invisible, but because I'd become unremarkable. Just another woman enjoying the day. The thought made my eyes sting. I bought my ice cream, walked back to my towel, and sat down with a laugh that surprised me with its ease. This was normal. I was normal. The confrontation I'd been bracing for came later that week. Family dinner. Neutral setting. Too many eyes. I'd debated what to wear for hours before finally choosing something simple, feminine, but not dramatic. Honest, but not confrontational. Halfway through the meal, someone cleared their throat. "So," they said carefully. "We saw the pictures." The table went quiet. I set my fork down slowly, heart thudding. "Yes," I said. A pause. "You looked different," they continued. I took a breath, grounding myself in the chair, in my body, in the truth I'd earned. "I am," I replied. "And I'm okay." Silence stretched. Then, unexpectedly, my aunt smiled faintly. "You looked like you were enjoying yourself." "I was," I said, voice steady. That was it. No shouting. No ultimatums. No collapse. Just reality adjusting. Later that night, alone in my room, I stood in front of the mirror again. But this time, it wasn't about inspection or disbelief. It was about gratitude. I studied the woman looking back at me, the curves, the softness, the quiet confidence settling into her posture. I remembered how terrified I'd been of this reflection once. How impossible it had felt. "I didn't lose myself," I whispered. "I'd found myself." Here's the truth they don't tell you about moments like that beach day. The shock doesn't come from other people's reactions. It comes from realizing how much of your life you've spent waiting for permission you never needed. I didn't shock the beach because I wore a bikini. I shocked it because I stopped apologizing with my body. And once you do that, once you let yourself take up space without shrinking, everything else shifts. If you're watching this and you're stuck on the edge of your own leap, wondering if confidence comes before courage or after, let me tell you what I learned the hard way. Courage is the step. Confidence is the echo.